So welcome back, everybody. We're holding in middle of chapter 31, Shadal Rebbe, which is pretty much towards the beginning. Let's say probably sixth of the chapter we've done already, and or even a little less. So the word actually is Velachin Kosav Arizal. Velachin Kosav Arizal, which is actually in the original text, it's 2, 4, 6, 8 lines. 2, 4, 6, 8 lines from the top of the Pedic. And in the English, it's Velachin Kosav Arizal. Therefore, the Arizal writes, as the Alter Rebbe over here pointed out, if you remember, about the consequence of pondering and reflecting in the previous chapters, Lamed, Chavtes, namely Chavtes and Lamed, one could Chas v'Sholem reach Atzvus, some type of depression, downness, melancholy, and apparently, it's not a good thing, as we know. It's not a good thing, as we all know. Hashem Simcha, as Dr. Rebbe himself elaborated on this time and again, how it's so important to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu with joy and gladness of heart. And Alter Rebbe says, even if you come to a broken spirit, which is even as a result of your broken spirit and broken heart, you come to Atzvus Gdeila, to a great sadness or downness, not sadness, downness. But don't worry about it. Depression, don't worry about it. So Alter Rebbe says, what do you mean don't worry about it? And just quickly recapping, the Atzvus comes from Klippa Senega, which we explained that it's not the lowest level of Klippa, but it's some Klippa. In other words, impure force, it remains to some degree, or to the degree of Klippa Senega itself, but it's not Kedusha, because Kedusha, everything Kedusha has to be Chedva is joy, Bimkaimai, and the Shekhinah does not dwell in Tech Simcha, generally, in particular when it comes to halacha. So how can I tell you don't worry? So Rebbe concludes, again, this was the conclusion of the last class, Atzvus comes from Mila D'Shmaya, from heavenly matters as opposed to worldly matters. A person is down not because he's missing a few dollars or other things which are associated with this physical mundane this physical world, or missing, lacking the physical, or lacking anything associated with this physical mundane world. That's why he's sad is one thing, but if he's down, not sad but down or depressed, or melancholy from heavenly matters, then it's okay. It's tev shebenega. It's the good of the nega. And therefore, the Alter Rebbe says, Lo Yochush. Again, you could look back in the previous classes. We elaborated on these very words in detail. And these very words, these very precise expressions of the Alter Rebbe, you could find it in the previous class, on the, as you put in the link box, Tanya, or on Tanya, the website tanyaonline.com. Again, with the advantage there you have it with the text. All invited. Usually the class goes on about 24 hours after it's given, so you could always find it there. So getting back to where we're holding V'lochein, and therefore Kosav Arizal Shefilodaiges Avoyne Seinuru Uyakim B'Shas Havidui V'Lei B'Shas Hatfilah, and therefore, which means the same reason when the Alter Rebbe says don't worry so much, because it's not the core of Klippas Nega, it's not the core of impurity, it's not the core of the negative forces, it's the Tev Shebenega, and therefore don't worry. But in the brackets, the Alter Rebbe says, holy, it's not. And because it's not holy, that Arizal tells us that any type of worry or preoccupation of sin is not fitted, not in the time of prayer, not in the time of learning Torah, which one has to be besimcha, with joy, which comes precisely mitzad hakdusha, anything associated with holiness, with the kodesh, which is the God, which is the supreme holiness, sanctity, and anything which is associated with holiness, and sanctity has to be b'simcha. And the only time where there could be daigus aveinus, worries about sin, is precisely b'shas havidu, when a person confesses his sin. A person confesses sin, and that only then can there be the daiga, because that's the whole point, to lead, to worry, to be concerned, to be preoccupied. But other than that, when it comes to prayer and learning Torah, which he's actually on the go, in his service, on duty, in his service, HaKadosh Baruch has to be precisely with simcha, precisely with joy. So it's interesting, and not with any atzvus. So it's interesting. The same reason when the Alter Rebbe says it's okay because it's toiv shebenega, it's the better part of nega, and therefore don't be concerned, don't be worried. The Alter Rebbe puts in the brackets over here, kedusha, holy, it's not, and therefore the Arizal says, don't invest, or don't pray with atzvus as a result, or together with atzvus. Don't learn Torah with atzvus. It has to be b'simcha, has to be with joy. Only b'shas havidu, in the time a person confesses, which you can say this is where the Alter Rebbe is saying that maybe perhaps you can say the Alter Rebbe is referring to this, the idea of vidui, the idea of a expression of atzvus, of depression, which comes as a result of his reflection, his retrospection, and which brings us nemichas ruach, leiv nishba, a broken heart, a broken spirit, which the Alter Rebbe is dealing with this atzvus. There's really not a contradiction with what the Alter Rebbe said before, what he adds in the brackets. In other words, before he says it's the teif shebenegas, don't worry about the atzvus. In the brackets he says no, holy it's not, and therefore do not pray in this spirit, and don't learn Torah in this spirit. Because it's not a contradiction. The Arizal says is b'shas videi, b'shas in time a person reflects on his sin and confesses on his sin, he's allowed to have this atzvus, which this is really the Alter Rebbe. In the beginning we wanted to even be shailul, we wanted to negate that at any time there should never be atzvus, and the Alter Rebbe says it's okay at times, perhaps alluding to what the Arizal says b'shas videi, in the time of reflection, which leads to confession and sin. It's okay to have this atzvus, because in the end of the day it comes from teif shebenega. And the Alter Rebbe goes on right after the brackets. Nonetheless, and I'm telling you that it's okay that periodically even to have this atzvus, because this is the way to subdue the sitra achra bimino v'dugmasa, in its same fashion, in its same manner, in its same symbol, in its same image, and it's the same sample. And he says, Azal say, Mineu bei abo lish de beinargo, upoga bei kayetze bei. I believe this Gemara, it means that you want to carve a piece of wood, you need wood to carve wood, or you need wood to knock a tree, you form an axe with wood, which the axe will knock out a tree, will knock down a tree or carve a tree. So you need the wood to deal with, to knock out other wood. Upoga bei kayetze bei. You mean it's met up similar to what it is, and in this case over here, you got to bring the Yetzer Hara down. The Yetzer Hara got to be brought down from its ego, from its narcissism, from its haughtiness. Like it says, Mishameritcha nu Mashem im tagbia kanesher. If it arises like a eagle, Mishameritcha nu Mashem. Hashem says, I'll bring it down based on the way you bring it down in this realm. So sometimes, at times, you got to bring down the Yetzer Hara when your spirit itself is down. In other words, Alter Rebbe justifies the notion as a periodic atzvus, because in the end of the day, what is atzvus? A person is down. So sometimes you got to use that downness, or that expression of downness in melancholy expression, in order to bring down the sitra achra, which is always standing with its overblown ego, and you got to bring it down. Sometimes you're expressing yourself, and a downward spirit brings it down. So it's not something which is it should constantly be, but at certain times it's healthy, because in order to bring down the sitra achra, you have to bring down yourself. And it says you have to sometimes use the same material to accomplish something with this, to accomplish something with the same material, like we gave the examples before. And this is what Alter Rebbe says periodically is justified. Because in the end of the day, you got to bring down the sitrach, and to bring down the sitrach, you have to be down. So the Alter Rebbe says it's teif shebenega, it's the better part of nega, because it's this downness, this atzvus is coming from mili dishmaya. Sometimes it's okay, because in the end of the day, we have to bring down the spirit of the sitra achra, and sometimes you have to do you have to express yourself in the same manner. And this what it says, that in every sadness there will be an advantage. There will be a result. There will derive from the sadness some type of advantage. This is a pasuk. And what is the Yisrin? The Yisrin is simcha ba'acharetzu kidlakama. It's the joy which comes after the Yetzer. Now, simply, when we think about, we know that Alter Rebbe had it also in the chapter 24. The Alter Rebbe speaks about the Tikkun Chatzos, that sometimes a person has to demonstrate his bitterness, his sadness, but he says that there's no greater, as we know it in our emotional characters and traits, or emotional expressions, and in the world of our emotional faculties, that a good joy, expression of joy, many times comes. It's a pure expression of joy when it comes immediately after a good cry. Sometimes by a wedding you have the chuppah. See the contrast of the chuppah and the simcha in the dance hall. And many people say, how could you experience the same type of experience in the same evening? Here you're crying, and it doesn't mean everybody's crying by the chuppah, but it's a very serious moment, and many times there's tears shed, and people reflect, especially the groom, the bride. They reflect on their mandate in this world, and the new chapter they're beginning, and their prayers and their hope to the Almighty that it should all work out, etc. And as well, we break the glass because it says Tidbak l'sheni l'chikim le'eskerechi. We remember Jerusalem. It's a very serious and intense, and again, perhaps an emotional, sad time, or not sad, but we express ourselves through tears at the time of the chuppah, and then contrasting that with the time of the chasana itself, where there's the greatest simcha, the simchas chasana b'kala, as you see it evidently. The joy is in the elation, which is expressed which is expressed at a wedding, is so very special and great and genuine. This is genuine joy. And as many ask, how do you reconcile the two? But it comes on the contrary. A true, more of a pure and genuine joy comes many times after a good cry. After a very good cry, the simcha which comes subsequent to a good cry is something very special. As we all know it, there's nothing. It's not a novelty. It's something that we all experience periodically. There's joy which comes out of nowhere, and then the joy which comes behemshech, in continuation of a good reflection and of a good cry. It's so much more pure. It's tahir. It's pure. It's genuine. It's authentic, and so on. So the Rebbe says there about the idea of Tikkun Chatzos. There in the chapter 26, it says Tikkun Chatzos. It's all about crying over the galus and so on. The Rebbe says that, and what was the custom of those who did Tikkun Chatzos? They learned B'simcha Rabba, with a very special joy. After Tikkun Chatzos, they learned Torah till dawn, or for a few hours, or for extensive time, and that learning was very special because it was a unique simcha rabba, unique and great and special joy, which came precisely after the tears which were poured of the galus hashchina, of the exile of the divine presence, which again is what Tikkun Chatzos is all about. And he also brings this pasuk that it's not about the sadness itself, is the meisad, the virtue which comes consequent or subsequent to it. And he says this is the simcha which comes achara etzav, as it's explained. So the Alter Rebbe over here points out, that it's not that we just stop by atzvus chas v'shalom. even till here, even till this nekuda, even till this period. It's not that we stop by atzvus. The point of the atzvus is, firstly, minei ubeilish de beinarga, like he says, you got to bring down the spirit of the nefesh bahamis, of the nefesh bahamis, which again is the host for the spirit of impurity. You got to bring down the spirit of impurity on high. Many times you use the same tactic. You use the same the same approach. And in this case, the atzvus, the downness, brings the spirit of the sitra achra down. So this is fine, but we don't. It's not a matter of. It's not something which we remain in that spirit of etzev. No, b'chol etzev yemeiser is the joy which will come subsequent to this etzev. The service with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which will come subsequent to this etzev, will be so much more special, more authentic, more genuine. In other words, the limud Torah, which will be learned mitech simcha, the prayer which will be prayed mitech simcha, precisely acha the etzev, will be something very special. So the Alter Rebbe says many times in Yiddishkeit, we never compromise Yiddishkeit and say, well, we're going to do something inappropriate in order that something good should come out of it. So that's what the Alter Rebbe already dealt with that in the previous few lines, which we reviewed over here briefly, that it's not something inappropriate. I will never tell you that to do something inappropriate in order to gain the simcha, which is the way to go about all of our Torah mitzvahs, with something which is inappropriate. Never tell that to you. Therefore, the Alter Rebbe clarifies. It's teif shebenega. It's okay. It passes. It's over the red line. But why would we go there? Answer: two reasons. One, to bring down the sitra achra. Sometimes you got to do something similar, which is, again, to the antidote to the sitra achra. When the sitra achra arises itself on high, how do we do it? We express ourselves with atzvus, number one. Number two, following this expression of the etzev, which is in a time of reflection and retrospection, again, which this we reconcile with Arizal says b'shas havidui, or the time of any reflection, which is similar to vidui, that eventually will bring the joy. The joy will be more genuine and special and pure, with the joy, again, associated with learning Torah, doing mitzvahs, serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'tech simcha, which comes achra etzev. And that's what he brings to the pasuk. So the Alter Rebbe clarifies over here that it's okay, and not only, and because it's okay, we'll use it for the reasons we just gave. And the Alter Rebbe goes on with something very interesting. It's a famous question that Rebbe asks on these following few lines, but which we'll try to just see what the Alter Rebbe is saying. He says, "Be'emes, the truth of the matter is, ein lev nish b'meridas hanefesh l'chukim meirat pnei Hashem, v'yislapshusa b'sitra achra nikroi m'shem atzvus kol." The truth of the matter is that it's not real atzvus. We know there's a difference. We know evidently there's a difference of atzvus and merirus. The question, I'm jumping the gun over here, the question that Rebbe asked over here, what does it mean? You're telling me this is all good and you're classifying this whole expression, it's really atzvus. Then he says, the truth is it's not atzvus. So what is it? So why do you say l'chatchila it's atzvus? But again, it's a subject and so on. But let's just try to follow the flow of the Alter Rebbe. Says the truth of the matter is it's not atzvus. As we all know, and it's so obvious to all of us, the difference between depression and bitterness. On the surface, it could be, depression. So depressive, so bitter. No. If you're depressed, you weren't bitter, and if you're bitter, you're not depressed. Depression is a person who becomes completely down. There's no chayis, there's no passion. He just becomes dry. Sometimes, when a person's depressed, he can't even cry. A person's depressed, sometimes he can't even express himself with a tear, because there's no chayis, there's no vitality, there's no passion. It's just dull. Merirus, bitterness, there's a lot of passion. There's a lot of expression of chayis. It's just not the chayis of simcha. It's not about chesed. It's more gvura, or any way you would define where merirus would be. It's usually be the opposite of lebedikait, simcha, chesed. But one thing is clear: it has the common denominator with simcha, that there's a lot of passion, and therefore a person is mar, he's bitter. He could cry, and he could pour out a very healthy cry. And in David HaMelech and Tehillim, how many times he said, "Sima dimasi b'neidecha," the importance, as we know it as well, in the importance of pchiyas and dima and avedas Hashem and our service to God. Why is it so important? Because there's so much chayis, there's so much healthy healthy vitality and healthy energy, to say it better, which comes from an expression of dima, of one pouring his heart out literally with tears from the face of in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And again, you find in Tehillim so many psukim. David HaMelech in Tehillim, David HaMelech expresses his dima, his cry, his tears, because as we all know it, and David HaMelech was the one who said it so clearly, or demonstrated the point so clearly, how it's an integral part of Avodas Hashem to express ourselves periodically with meriras, with sadness, which usually results in a good, healthy pour of a cry out of her, a good, healthy cry. For that matter, it's interesting. The Arizal, famous Arizal, says, Al Rebbe is not quoted over here. The Arizal says, whoever doesn't cry in Aseret Yimei Tshuva, his neshama is incomplete. If we don't have that simple burst of cry, as in the days of Aseret Yimei Tshuva, the days of these 10 days of repentance, which are days of retrospection and reflection, there's something incomplete about our neshama. So the Alter Rebbe is saying over here, the truth of the matter is, a broken heart and a bitterness of the soul, and it's distant from the light of the Pnei Hashem, the face of Hashem, and its investment in the Sitra Achra is not called B'Shem Atzus Klal. It's not called depression. In other words, investment in impure forces is not called depression, B'Lashon HaKodesh. It's called merirus. Because Atzvus, he says, shali b'mitumtum ka'evet. When you're dealing with depression, his heart is completely blocked like a stone. Ve'ein chayis b'libe. There is no passion in his heart. Merirus, v'lev nishbar, bitterness and a broken heart. Adarabah. Quite on the contrary, yesh chayis b'libe. There's a lot of vitality in his heart. Li spoil, to be excited. Excited means to say that it's an expression of hispilus. Uismarmer, and to be bitter. So there's so much passion here. So really, the Alter Rebbe says that you cannot call it atzvus. The truth of the matter is, it's not atzvus, it's not depression, it's merirus. And if it's merirus, it's only good because there's so much life and there's so much passion and so much vitality in merirus. The only thing is, in chayis, there's different ways a person expresses his chayis, his passion in his Avodas Hashem. It could be through chesed, which is simcha, and it could be through gvura, because the heart includes both of them, as we're going to learn Beth Hashem next week. The heart includes both chesed and gvura, so the passion could be expressed via chesed, in other words, through love, through joy, and so on, elation, chedva, but the same heart expresses itself with as well passion, but passion mitzad gvura, which is again the expression of merirus, bitterness, but in this case, it's namely, without the Rebbe says, if it's bitterness and if there's chayis, it's only good. And at that point, I don't have to tell you or introduce this kind of heter, or introduce this notion that it's klipas nega, but teif shemenega, because in this case, it's only about kedusha. Because if there's chayis, if there's passion, anything associated with chayis, especially when it's utilized l'tevas hanefesh, l'teva for the good and benefit of Avodas Hashem, it is only kedusha. Have a good night.